fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
I adjusted my name tag, Emily Wilson, and straightened my blazer for what felt like the 100th time that morning. As a museum tour guide, I took pride in my work, and today was no exception. Our museum was famous for its collection of ancient artifacts, and I was about to lead a group of visitors through the most popular exhibit. As I began my introduction, I noticed a peculiar individual standing at the back of the group. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes and jet black hair that fell to his shoulders. There was something unsettling about him, but I pushed the feeling aside and continued with the tour. The first few stops were uneventful, but as we approached the exhibit on ancient civilizations, the mysterious stranger began to speak up. At first, his corrections were minor, but as the tour progressed, his interruptions became more frequent and more pointed. "I'm afraid that's incorrect," he said, his deep voice commanding attention. "The Pyramid of Giza was built during the Old Kingdom period, not the New Kingdom." I forced a smile and nodded, trying to hide my growing annoyance. "Yes, you're right, thank you for correcting me." But he didn't stop there. He continued to interrupt me at every turn, correcting my statements about the Rosetta Stone, the Sphinx, and even the mummification process. I began to feel like a student being scolded by a teacher, and my patience was wearing thin. As we entered the gallery dedicated to ancient Greek mythology, I decided to take a stand. And on your right, you'll see a stunning example of a Greek urn decorated with scenes from the myth of Persephone. The stranger stepped forward, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Actually, that's not a Greek urn. It's a Roman imitation created during the 1st century AD. I felt my face heat up and my voice took on a slightly sharper tone. "I apologize for the mistake. However, I'd appreciate it if you could let me finish my explanations before correcting me." The stranger raised an eyebrow but said nothing. For a moment I thought I'd won, but then he spoke up again, his voice low and smooth. "I'm afraid I've been alive for a very long time, Miss Wilson. I've seen the rise and fall of civilizations, and I've had the privilege of witnessing history unfold. Forgive me if my corrections seem pedantic, but I'm merely trying to ensure the accuracy of the information being presented." I stared at him, taken aback by his words. What did he mean by a very long time? Was he some kind of historian or archaeologist? And why did he seem to take such pleasure in correcting me? As the tour continued, I found myself growing more and more flustered. The stranger's constant interruptions were not only annoying, but they were also starting to undermine my confidence. I began to wonder if I was cut out for this job, if I was truly knowledgeable enough to lead a tour through the museum. But then something unexpected happened. As we were leaving the gallery, the stranger fell into step beside me, his long strides easily keeping pace with mine. "Miss Wilson," he said, his voice low and husky, "I apologize if my corrections have been trying. It's just that I've seen so much, and I want to make sure that the truth is preserved." I looked up at him, feeling a spark of curiosity. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Alexander," he replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "And you are?" I smiled back, feeling a sense of trepidation. "Emily, it's nice to meet you, Alexander." As we walked, Alexander began to ask me questions about the museum and its collections. I found myself opening up to him, sharing my passion for history and my love of the artifacts on display. For the first time that day, I felt like I was speaking with someone who truly understood me. As the tour came to a close, Alexander thanked me for my time and turned to leave. But then he paused, his eyes locking onto mine. "Emily," he said, his voice low and intense, "I'd like to see you again. Perhaps we could discuss the museum's collections over dinner." My heart skipped a beat as I hesitated, unsure of what to say, but then I nodded, feeling a sense of excitement. "I'd like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As Alexander smiled and disappeared into the crowd, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for us. Was this the start of a beautiful relationship, or was I simply caught up in the thrill of the moment? Only time would tell. But as I watched him go, I couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander was hiding something. That there was more to him than met the eye, and I was determined to uncover the truth. Over the next few weeks, Alexander and I met for dinner several times, discussing everything from ancient civilizations to modern art. I found myself falling for him hard, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding something back. It wasn't until we were walking through the museum one evening, the galleries closed to the public, that I stumbled upon the truth. We were standing in front of a display case, Alexander's eyes fixed on an ancient relic, when I noticed something strange. "Alexander," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "How old are you?" He turned to me, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I'm older than you think, Emily," he said, his voice low and husky. "I'm immortal." I stared at him, my mind reeling. Immortal, what did that even mean? As Alexander began to explain, telling me about his long life and his experiences throughout history, I felt my world expanding. I was no longer just a museum tour guide, but a part of something much larger than myself. And as I looked into Alexander's eyes, I knew that I was falling in love with him. Not just with the man, but with the eternity that lay before us. But as we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that our love was forbidden. That there were those who would seek to tear us apart, to keep us from being together. And as the darkness closed in around us, I knew that our journey was only just beginning.